Welcome to the Comics Cube, everyone. We are here today to talk about the great Neal Adams. Where do you guys first encounter Neal Adams's work, Paul?
Um, I first encountered Neil Adams' work as a child. My father going through my father's comics with this, and as you can see, it's fallen to bits because it's got no back cover. It's completely fallen to bits because I didn't know it was such a top comic when I was a kid. I just really liked it and read it all the time until it fell to bits. Um, so yeah, this is the first appearance of Razel Ghoul, and obviously because I was a wimpy kid, I was terrified of the cover because it's a hell of a cover. And in the first page, it's like Robin climbing into his window and getting shot. So that's quite traumatic as well as a kid. But it's just as a kid, like that art, even in the 80s, it's a time where even in Britain, the Batman comics I'm exposed to, it's all people who've come after Neil Adams, but even then that artwork still stood out as something amazing, and it just feels really grown up that when you're a kid, Neil Adams art does, because it was that style and just the way he tells the story. And then, of course, after that, then the next thing that sticks in my brain as a kid is this his work,
Ah, yeah.
and to a kid, this feels super grown up, Um, so yeah, so I'm not just saying it, like he really made an impression on me from an early age.
Yeah, I think I saw him first in, one of those books about comics, those reprints, because
Hmm.
his stuff gets reprinted a lot. So there's definitely the Batman stuff. There's that one panel where he's like, even criminals get old. And there's one, obviously the one where he's running. Uh, and then there's also Green Lantern, Green Arrow. What about you, LaMar?
What was the first time that I saw? Oh, easy. I don't even have to think about it. The the reproduction of the image with Superman breaking the chains. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
the first time I remember seeing his art.
I've got a question
Um,
for you. I got a question for you.
yeah. Mm.
Minus Action 1 and Superman 1, is
Mm.
there a more iconic Superman cover?
No, no, definitely not. Because
With
I,
Superman on it, because the Death of
yeah,
Superman one is.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that one has it's still being, people are still doing it, like doing their riffs on it and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of hard to beat that one just on that, because it's almost like a rite of passage, almost like, so you want to make your mark on Superman. That's like one of the things you do, is reproduce that cover or reproduce that image rather.
I tell you what, if there are more iconic images, they're drawn by Neil Adams because there's
Probably.
that famous cover of Superman flying up towards
Yeah.
the reader with
Yeah.
"What are you
Hmm.
smiling about, Superman?" And also there's Superman fighting Muhammad Ali as well.
There's
Those are
that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
two really iconic images, and they're both drawn by Neil Adams.
Would you have a favorite Neil Adams work, guys?
Mm.
Which
Favorite
one?
one. Yeah. Paulie, I'm gonna let you go, man, because I gotta think about it a minute.
Oh, there's so many. Just everything about Green Lantern, Green Arrow. I just love the page where like Ollie is telling off. Yeah, this page here, where it's just like, look at this guy. He's so like, who's this dude just having the nerve to stand up to us? And like Ollie's like in full melodrama mode there,
Look at that.
and
Look at that. Look at that gesture right there. That is so good.
you could take away the speech bubbles and you'd know exactly what was going on, even
Hmm.
without
Yeah.
that's that Bobby Kennedy rather
Yeah.
than
That's
and
Bobby
Martin
Kennedy.
Luther King. even if you didn't recognize them, you'd know that this was like a mortal standing up to a godlike being there, and imploring someone else to listen. I absolutely love that page. And I love all of his famous Joker issue as well. Is it Joker's Five-Way
It's
Revenge?
Five-Way Revenge.
The thing is, I mean, obviously that's got the famous running page that you talked
No,
about.
that was the first time I saw Neal Adams' work. It was Five-Way Revenge on a Viewmaster.
Oh wow! Oh, that's amazing.
Now that I think about it.
Yeah. So you've got that's got the famous running thing. You've got the cover, which is amazing. Joker holding Batman on a playing card. You've got just all the goons that Batman goes to visit to warn because the whole story is him going to visit Joker's goons to say Joker's going to kill you, and then going, leave me alone, Batman, I'm fine, and then Joker kills them, and I think he manages to save one of them at the end, and they all look different, and there's one who tries to evade him called Bigger Melvin, which is a really weird name, and like he looks really distinctive as well. He's got this long hair, and like this, I've seen other artists like homage Bigger Melvin in other strips, so like just like every single page of that issue is memorable, and Batman fights a shark in it as well.
Yeah,
which is amazing.
adapted into the animated series.
Yeah,
It was,
of course.
the laughing fish, and with the ending of Five-Way Revenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my favorite, I've been posting it a lot. My favorite Neal Adams page is from Green Lantern, Green Arrow. It's the one where Black Canary's taking care of Speedy when he's going through his withdrawal. Because like it's completely silent. You know exactly what's going on. The only knock you can have about it is that Speedy doesn't exactly look like a teenager, but like who can draw teenagers back then? Who could draw teenagers until recently, until the invention of the internet? Have you ever seen John Byrne draw a baby? I rest my case. So,
he's never seen it either.
LaMar, you have a favorite?
It's limited to like an interior page, right?
No, any
or just any image. Okay.
You want, yeah.
Oh, no question. The cover for World's Finest, number 208, with it's a really dramatic cover. It's him and Dr. Fate, and Superman is like he's hooked up to this contraption and he's towing the Earth, right? So and that story is crazy too. It basically deals with Superman trying to overcome his vulnerability to magic, right? Yeah. And so it's funny because there's a lot of time traveling and all this other kind of stuff, and then at the end of it, Superman's just kind of like, well, never mind, don't worry about it. I'm gonna just keep the vulnerability to magic because it actually comes in handy sometimes. So he just decides, yeah, don't worry about it. But Dr. Fate was like, no, man, look, I can do this for you, right? It's not hard, right? So he just was like, nah, don't worry about it. I got it. It's cool. Don't worry about it. I can live with it. But yeah, just that image is just like the facial expressions and the body posture, trying to pull off something like that and just using a cover, like which you're just talking one sheet of paper, not even a gatefold or anything. It's really difficult, to make it look convincing. Just that kind of stuff. Like I'm a really big fan of his covers in general, especially like his X-Men stuff, which I'm not like a big fan of X-Men like some people are, but yeah, his X-Men covers too are just absolutely crazy.
Man, you ever see the page of where he has Beast falling from the sky?
Yeah,
and it's like laid out completely diagonally. That is genius. Who was doing that at the time?
Yeah.
I tell you what, when I found out that Neal Adams was, because I used to get books from the library as a kid, and I found like Neal Adams drawing X-Men, and I think I just assumed it was, that must have been well into the 70s or something, but it was still the original team, and I was like, wow, he was doing this before before they reinvented the X-Men, like, and that
Mhm.
must have looked so different.
Yeah.
Imagine you're
Yeah.
reading X-Men and then suddenly Neal Adams is on it, like,
No, imagine anything. Because
Mm,
I was wondering how to explain Neil Adams to somebody who doesn't read comics, doesn't get it. And I finally settled on this. I showed them a picture of Dick Sprang's Batman, which I love Dick Sprang. I think he's great. But then I showed him a picture of Dick Sprang's Batman, and I said, this is pretty standard Batman for the 60s. And then I showed a picture of Neil Adams as Batman. And I'm like, and then this is Neil Adams, like right after. Like, can you imagine being there at the time when Neil Adams gets on a book? Like, can you
mm,
imagine? Because I can't.
yeah. It's like you getting Brave and the Bold every week, every month, and then all of a sudden there's that Green Arrow Batman cover with the senators being shot, and that would have still been in the '60s at that point, I guess.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
Something
yeah,
like that, yeah. Or the early
Yeah.
70s at the very least.
yeah, wouldn't have
Yeah.
been far off the '60s at least. Like,
Mhm.
and like I said, those X-Men ones as well must have came out of nowhere. Like,
Yeah, because for me, one of the things that makes Kirby so great was, well, the way I explain Kirby to people is I like to show them the picture of Kurt Swan showing the parasite pounding Superman. You guys know what I'm talking about?
mm,
Mhm. Mhm.
Which
Yeah.
is like, okay, fine, whatever. I think it's technically accurate. But then I show a Kirby picture, which is just so dynamic and it might not be technically accurate. And then all of a sudden Neil Adams comes in, who is both technically
mm,
accurate and dynamic, which
Yeah.
is, who is this good, right?
yeah.
Mhm.
To the point
In
where
fact,
everyone has copied him.
mm, isn't the second Parasite appearance also a Neil Adams cover as well? So
Oh
that's an elder
Yeah.
yeah.
contrast, isn't
Mhm.
it? Between the
Mhm.
first appearance of the Parasite and the second appearance of the Parasite. And the
Yep.
second appearance, you've got Superman flying at the reader with a black eye.
Yeah, that's so great.
Yeah.
Yeah, LaMar.
Yeah. Like I just was gonna say, like the way that he upped the game, especially when you're talking about like interiors, you know, because he came from that like commercial art background, right? So he brought a lot of that sensibility into it. And when you're doing that kind of art, you know, the name of the game is draftsmanship, right? So it's everything. Like if you're trying to sell a construction project, for example, and you have to draft up this thing where you can present it to people to get them, into it. And so just doing that kind of stuff, it's really competitive, and you have to stand out, but you can't stand out too much because then it throws people off because they want like traditional stuff, right? So like what you were talking about, like about you going from like Dick Sprang to Neal Adams, right? We tend to think about like the Neal Adams style. People are still drawing like that, and we're like 60 years removed from that almost. So just think about that for a moment. Like a lot of people's like house styles and stuff revolved around the stuff he was doing, whether he was working for him or not, right? So and that continued after he left these places and started doing his other stuff. um that's just a powerful testament to how a person's work, obviously we're talking about it outlived him, right? So just to have that kind of impact in the field, very few people have that opportunity even when they do it at a high level.
LaMar, I know you are a student of history and representation. So,
Mm-hmm.
in the context of art, storytelling, comics, everything,
Mm-hmm.
there's a particular panel from Green Lantern, Green Arrow, the first one, the first issue, that's been reprinted over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
with where an old black man tells Hal Jordan to step the hell up. In the context of the history of comics and the way black people have been represented throughout,
Mm-hmm.
where do you think that places? What is its significance?
With that particular scene, I
And the
tend to
way
look
the black man is
the way
drawn.
he's drawn.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I'm gonna tell you something. Like I knew, like I can't even say I knew. I know people that look like that, right? And they're just your everyday people, and you're ultimately talking about somebody who represents people whose voices are not being heard because people don't want to hear them, right? And so I know some people, are like, well, Green Lantern is a person, he kind of saves the world and he saves the universe. So like everybody's included in it, right? But when you take that and put it in like a real world setting, it's the same thing as asking people or telling people rather, well, hey, listen, they passed this law and they made this illegal. Like, so that should be good enough for you because it affects everybody, right? But that approach is problematic for a lot of reasons because there are certain people who have certain needs that need to be addressed. And when you talk about people being attacked and stuff, the differences that people have, you're attacked because of those differences. So when you're ostracized, it's because of the differences. So basically, I took it as this person who was standing for Black people in America. He just was asking him, "Hey, man, look, it's like we need to have our own particular protections. Like, what are you going to do about it?" Right? If I had access to a superhero or something like that, or if we all did, I think those are legitimate questions. Not so much so that these superheroes would have to stop doing their other stuff, but it's just like, hey man, just give us a little piece. We don't want the whole pie, just a little slice, a little sliver. Can we get that? You know, I mean, because who else are you going to ask? Like everybody else you asked didn't listen. So what's the harm, right? The only thing you can say is no, right?
Yeah, the biggest problem I have with that scene is that Green Arrow is right there. He's the rich guy. He actually can do more of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's
Freaking
true.
billionaires.
Yeah, which is funny because Hal is always, even though he's like a test pilot or whatever, he has that military background. He's always presented as being like broke all the time,
Because he's not good with his money.
Yeah, he's terrible with money. Yeah.
Yeah, but like even because I was reading, a lot of Silver Age Marvels, and invariably until something like Robbie Robertson, right? Whenever I
Mhm.
saw a black character like in the background or something, it'd always be like you wouldn't be able to tell he was black, right? He looked like a white. He was drawn white and then colored gray. Why
Mhm.
gray? I don't know, right? But then all of a sudden, like again, imagine being there and then seeing Neal Adams draw this guy from this particular camera angle with all of the cracks in his face. And that's got to be impactful.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, he also created Jon Stewart.
Yeah.
Guy was a trailblazer.
Yeah. In a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, even away from the actual business of drawing comics. Like behind the scenes, he did so much stuff, man, that I don't think people he deserves credit just for that on like a whole nother level, you know.
Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Neal Adams fought for that credit in 1978. That's 40 years of Schuster and Siegel not getting any credit. And then Neal Adams got them that credit. That is incredible. We just recently, did we? Just recently pass the halfway mark
Mm-hmm.
of
For
for 40 years from there. Yeah. So like
yeah.
it's been
Yep.
it's been 43 years where they've been getting the credit,
Mm-hmm.
which is that's it. We've only been crediting them for 44 out of their 74 years or whatever. No,
Yeah.
84 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's really sad.
Yeah.
Uh, Paul, do you have anything else you want to say about Neal Adams's art or his advocacies outside of comics?
Yeah, just what an interesting guy he is generally. Like, I mean, obviously there's his advocacy he's got going on, but like also like the stuff he's been doing in recent years. It's not to everyone's taste, like Batman Odyssey, stuff like that. But it's been interesting. and it's just fascinating to see a guy who's earned the right to do whatever the hell he wants, do whatever the hell he wants with a character
Mhm.
like Batman, like, you know.
His creative choices. There's a splash page in Batman Odyssey. One issue literally opens up with him eating a banana. Like it's a close up of him eating a banana. Like
Yeah.
who does this?
And when that came out, I was like, "What the hell is it?" But now, as I get older, I'm like, This is interesting. Yeah, this is no one else is doing
This is
this. You
interesting.
know?
Mhm.
This is different. It's still
Mm.
incredibly well drawn,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And then there's all of his science fiction theories,
Yes.
which he has
He's-
said is all story opportunities, but I think he said it a little too late.
I mean, anyway you look at it, yeah, this is an interesting guy who is
Yeah.
worth, you know, who's worth your
Mhm.
time, you know, in every way.
Mhm.
LaMar, I ran this by Paul during before you showed up.
Okay.
This is a weird what if, right? So as we are recording this, we are 2 days away from the finale of Moon Knight.
Mhm.
Okay. Moon Knight is a weird show. In 1979, 1980, Bill Sienkiewicz had a portfolio full of Batman stuff that was drawn exactly like Neal Adams. He went to DC to get a job. DC wasn't hiring because DC had just imploded. So Bill went over to Continuity Studios. That's another thing. Neal gave a lot of people work.
Yeah.
And then Neal Adams looks at his stuff, calls up Jim Shooter and says, hire this kid. Jim Shooter looks at Sienkiewicz's portfolio and says, what character do we have that is most like Batman? Let's give him a series so that we can give it to Bill.
Mhm.
So therefore, Moon Knight gets a series. After 1 year, all of the praise that was he can draw exactly like Neal Adams becomes criticism, which is he can only draw like Neal Adams, which is why Bill starts getting, pulling in all of his other influences and why Moon Knight starts getting really weird and psychedelic. So think about this, LaMar. A Disney Plus show exists today because DC wouldn't hire a guy who wanted to draw Batman in 1979.
Hey, it's just it's another feather in the cap of the long line of bad decisions that these people have made when it comes to hiring people and putting people on books. I mean, you're not gonna be able to hit them all, but hit some, right? So
And in my mind, I'm like, well, that's a really weird thing that Neal Adams has kind of impacted.
Mhm.
Like 40 years later, like, and he was, I think, like, how did you feel when you heard the news? Because I was in shock. I thought he was like healthy.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it blindsided me. I mean, because I wasn't thinking about it. Like, I didn't know he was sick. I know, yeah, I know he was the type of person that kept his like personal life real close to the vest. And I respect that. So especially with somebody of his stature and the kind of business he's in, where we're in the internet age and everybody knows all your business. So, but yeah, so at first I thought it was like one of those things where it's like a celebrity will be proclaimed dead and then they pop up and they're like, man, I'm not dead, man. Who makes up this stuff? That happens every so often. So I thought that that's what it was, but then when I started seeing other people like talking about it on their personal walls that knew him and stuff like that, and I was like, wow, you know.
Yeah, I think,
Mm.
yeah, that was a shock to me.
Yeah.
Like, Paul, did you?
Well, yeah, I mean, wasn't it like last year he had a Fantastic Four series out, where
Mm-hmm.
he's just doing stuff. He was still a presence, like, and yeah, it was a hell of a shock. I didn't think. I mean, I knew he must be, older than me, obviously, but I didn't think of him as old because he was still working. He was, he's
Dude,
seeing his stuff on the shelves.
did he look like he was 80?
No,
No, no,
Right?
no, he
no,
didn't. No,
mm-mm.
no, no.
No,
No,
definitely not.
he looked like he was like 60.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Like he looked super healthy, but I don't know. You never know, right? You never know. I've seen Walt Simonson tell a story about Neil And the one thing that sticks in my mind about it is that Neal Adams eventually at cons had got booths the size of a battleship. I've never seen him at a con, I think, but I can just imagine Neal Adams somewhere with like a gigantic table around.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, because I met him at a con here a few years ago. And pretty much what you think he's like in person, that's what he's like.
Wow.
I'm going to tell you this really quick too. I was getting a print for my brother because he's a huge Batman fan, right? So he was doing autographs and stuff. So I was waiting in line, and there's this guy in front of me, and they're actually like having an argument because the guy said something. He quoted Einstein or whatever. They were talking physics before I came up. So he quotes Einstein, and then Neal Adams was like, "Oh, so what are you trying to say? You trying to say Einstein's smarter than me?" And so he was like, "No, I didn't say that at all." But he was like, "Yeah, you kind of implied it though." You know, and the dude looks back at me and I'm like, "Hey man, listen, I'm trying to get this print, bro. Can you kind of like conclude this?" Like, yo, deal with what you got to deal with, man. But can you conclude this? Because I ain't got all day, right? So then he gets his thing signed and he's like, "Oh yeah, man, pleasure to meet you, man. Have a good day." And then it just the whole mood switched like that. And so I go up to him and I'm talking and I'm like, your usual spiel, man. I've been a fan of yours since I was a little boy and stuff like that. And so he's like, "Well, you don't sound like a person that's from Virginia. Where are you from?" So I was like, "North Carolina." And so he was like, "North Carolina, that's north of here, right?" I said, "No, it's south of here." And he was like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so he was like, "Well, it's North Carolina, so it has to be north, right?" That's like, see, I don't think you know what you're talking about. And he was like, "Have you ever thought about this?" And I was like, "No, I don't think about things like this, man. All I know is when I go home, I go south, and when I come back, I go north. That's all I know." And I'm looking at his wife. I'm like, "Is he serious?" And she's just looking at me like, "Yeah, you know." But he was pleasant and everything, man. Yeah, and he was like, "Here, man, you know what, man? I like you, man. Here, you pick out that one, pick one, and I'll give you another one." So he gave me like two for the price of one, which was really dope for him, and and stuff like that. And I shook his hand and I walked off. But yeah, that was a very surreal experience. So
That was
I'm just saying.
awesome. And I feel like that's a good note to end it on. Anyone else have anything to say? Rest in peace, Neal Adams. Thank you for everything.